Hello, hello, my friends. AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink. Welcome back to my face and my card making space. And a fairly simple video using 3D embossing folders, my distress watercolor pencils, because I'm just kind of fixated on those, the teensiest bit of ink blending, and of course splatter. So as always, links to all the things will be in the description box below the video. If you expand the description box, everything will be there. All of my links are affiliate links. That just means that if you click on one of my links and end up placing an order, I get a little kickback from that at no extra cost to you. And let's get right into making this card. So I'm using the Simon Says Stamp Blossom Bunches 3D embossing folder. And I have a piece of distress watercolor paper. And I added just the lightest mist of water to it. That just helps soften the fibers a bit so that it doesn't crack when I run it through my die cut machine with the embossing folder. And for my Anna Griffin EMPRESS die cut machine and the Simon Says Stamp 3D embossing folders, I've got the sandwich on the screen there, and it's just the one die cut plate and the folder with the cardstock in it. So I embossed my main panel. And then this embossing folder comes with 2 wafer dies that look like nothing. But I die cut another piece of the distress watercolor paper, and then these are just going to fit right into the openings of the embossing folder. So the top, kind of the top right and the bottom right florals, they just fit. So I stick them into that spot. You can also tape them into place. I only tape them. It just depends because, sometimes when they just don't want to stay, they don't want to stay where they belong. I'll tape them with, a little bit of low tack tape. But if they stay, I don't worry about it. So I die cut those and emboss those. And then my main panel here, I took a couple different shades of Simon's Pawsitively saturated ink and used my blending brush and just blended over what will be like the background and the greenery. And I started with celery ink, and then I'm using Perfection. And I ain't worried about going over some of the florals a bit because the die cut ones will layer on top. And then that individual one, when I paint it, since I'm using distress watercolor pencils, it'll just kind of sit on top as well. And then for the painting, it's a hot mess, honestly. I was coming down with the nasty cold that I was fighting recently when I filmed this. So I was kind of creating in a fever dream in a sense. But I was still having fun. I have been just playing with my distress watercolor pencils a lot lately. And for those, if you're not familiar, I will link at the end of this video to my playlist that I have with all the, just a bunch of videos that I've done using distress watercolor pencils. And my initial, when I started doing this, I was planning on kind of going direct to paper that I've shown by dipping my watercolor pencils into water and then going direct to paper. I found that wasn't really going to work, at least not this time. I may revisit it again. I've shown it in other ways using just die cuts, and it works really well for that. But for this, it was kind of just, I preferred just taking the color directly from using my water brush and just taking it directly from the pencil. I've also shown a palette option that's in the playlist. You can kind of do whatever works for you. I still did a bit of direct paper though this is spun sugar. I used Twisted Citron and Mowed Lawn for the greenery. And this is all just sped up in editing because I'm not doing anything too special, you guys. I was literally slapping the color on. It was just, I wasn't feeling good. I was in a mood. And then it was later that I was like, oh yeah, I genuinely wasn't feeling good. I was coming down to something. Anyway, I used those two. And then for the florals, I was using spun sugar and picked raspberry. And for the spun sugar, that's where I just kind of went direct to paper, swirled my watercolor pencil in the water, slapped it on there, and then moved the color around. On the background, those 2 flowers that I had die cut, I just literally slapped the color on because you're not really going to see anything. But I wanted a bit of color because some of it will show underneath, just, if the card's on an angle, that sort of a thing. And then with the die cut ones, I ended up sticking them to one of my grip mats so that they're not sliding all over the place. It just kind of holds them in place enough so that I'm not fighting with them on my glass work surface. And same thing, I kind of just slap the color on. Although at the end, I revisit and fix it a little bit because I was just like, Oh boy, this really is a hot mess. I will say though, and I've shown this in other ways too, it is fun. Like no line coloring is intimidating. And even for me, still, I find no line coloring to be intimidating. But there's something about either just doing it with die cuts or like these embossing folders with the raised images that I find it therapeutic, and I actually enjoy it more than stamping an image and trying to paint it like in a no line sense. So to each their own, but I recommend trying something like this, especially if you like no line, like the idea of no line coloring, but you find that it's very, intimidating. So the thing too to note with anything that's been embossed, if you've watercolored it, you lose a lot of that detail, especially like I was doing, layers of color, etc. It just, you'll start to see like it's starting to get harder and harder to see what you're doing, to see the detail. And that's because it's literally flattening out as you're coloring it. So when everything was done, I ran it through with the embossing folder, and everything just kind of clicks into place. You just kind of shimmy it around a little bit and it'll fit, and then you re-emboss it. And that's what brings everything sort of back. Cause like even these individual florals, they were looking like a hot mess. But when I re-embossed them and brought back the raised detail, which is so difficult to see on camera, that's why I try and like tilt it, and I'll show at the end as well. I'll kind of tilt it up in the light, because when you're looking at it straight on camera, everything just looks like a flat, hot mess. But when you actually can see the detail, it's like, oh, it's not just hot garbage. Anyway. After I was done embossing all the things again, got the detail back, I just laid everything in my splat box, and then I added splatter, because that always helps too. I had also added some with the picked raspberry watercolor pencil. Oh, and I used mustard seed for the flower centers. These were reminding me of like peonies, these florals. That's what, the ones with the really roughly kind of jagged edges. So yeah, I love peonies. Anyway, I added gold splatter to all the things, as one does with my Gansai Tambi watercolor palette. And then I set all that aside to dry. And while it was drying, I die cut scraps of smooth white cardstock with the Bold Thanks wafer die. This is an oldie but goodie favorite of mine that I've used a million times. And I stacked the layers together with craft tacky glue. And then the top layer I die cut from a scrap of Simon's matte gold cardstock, hence the gold splatter. So gold splatter, a gold sentiment, and then I'll add a little bit of gold bling at the end, of course, just to tie it all together. So stacked all those together to give this some like dimension. And then after I had the sentiment, ready to go, I also pulled out another oldie but goodie favorite of mine, which is the Grateful and Thankful sentiment strips and my guillotine trimmer. So my background is dry, and I trimmed this down to about 3 3/4 by 5 inches. Just so that the card base can kind of frame it a little bit. So I trimmed that down, and I used some baker's twine, because that's just been my other little fixation of the last, couple months again. And wrapped some of that around my card base, and then my trusty little reverse tweezers to hold the knot in place so I can sit and fiddle and zhuzh my little bow until I am happy with it. And once I'm happy with it, I can pull it tight, remove the reverse tweezers, pull it tight again to make sure everything's good to go. And then I can trim off the excess with my scissors. And then to adhere the die cut florals, I'm going to pop these up with a little bit of dimension. So I'm just using some thin foam squares. So that'll just give them that little extra bit. We've already got like dimension and texture going on with everything, but this gives it just another step up. So I adhered the top one first, and then I want to adhere my sentiment, because I'm going to kind of just barely tuck it under just the very little edge of that lower flower. So got the adhesive on the back of this, and then I'm going to stick this down onto my card front here, and then I can adhere the other little die cut floral. So got those into place. Again, just used my little thin foam squares for that. Peel off the backing, and then stick this little floral into place, just like so. And then the Grateful and Thankful sentiment strips. This is another oldie but goodie fave that I've like repurchased more than once because I use them so often. So I trimmed down one of the sentiments from this with my guillotine trimmer, and then I'm going to stick that to the inside of my card, and my card base is just going to be a top folding A2 white note card. And I thought for half a second, I was like, maybe I shouldn't add both of these florals because, you know, that one is kind of big, but go big or go home, you know? I was like, there's still plenty of space to write to the recipient. I'm fine with it. So I adhered these to the inside of the card as well with my craft tacky glue. Just kind of stuck them around the sentiment there. And then I'm going to put some Big Mama foam tape on the back of my card front so that it will lay flat and also, again, give it just a little extra dimension. You know, why not? So pop that into place. And then I've got some gold confetti. Like I said, I had to have a little bit of gold bling. So I've got gold splatter, the gold sentiment, the gold confetti. We're good to go. And I was going to be done here, but it was just bothering me that the florals were just looking just almost too flat. So I just took my picked raspberry watercolor pencil and my little water brush and just added a little bit more. That's it. Right on top of everything. It was fine. You can still even see the splatter because the splatter had dried and I wasn't adding a ton, like wasn't actively trying to super reactivate everything, you know? It was fine. You know, I was okay with it. I don't normally do that. Usually it's like, just walk away from it. You know, it's fine. But every once in a while. And I'm glad I did it because it did. I was able to kind of bring back a little bit more of the depth and stuff. I just kind of tucked the deeper color into where I felt it needed. And then I was fine with it. And there, now you can see the dimension. Because like I said, when you're looking at it straight on camera, it's like, no, what? But yeah, it's there. So anywho, I'll have links to all the things in the description box below the video. So you can just check that out if you are interested. And as always, thank you all so very much for taking the time to watch my videos, for thumbs upping, for commenting. It does help a lot and I very much appreciate it. Subscribe if you haven't. I'd love to have you. I'll see you all in the next video, hopefully very soon. And I'll have a link to other videos, the playlist, etc. here at the end for anyone who wants to check it out. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye.